DC is showing the biggest sales numbers they've had since the late 80s. What we're seeing right now is this not only a generational shift, but a shift towards building the content around this generation. And so as a result, I think we are in for another 5 to 10 years of growth as this Generation Z comes into our shops and begins to shape how the entire industry works. Hi, my name is Adam Freeman. I am the publisher of Comics the Magazine. You can find us at comicsthemagazine.com and Comics the Magazine on every social you might want to be on. You are watching and or listening to Two Geeks Talking. Hey, I'm one of them.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a multi-talented individual like we have on this show before. In fact, we have interviewed a couple of creators/publishers on the show. SourcePoint Press is one of them, and Pesto Comics, Adriano or Ariganello. More recently, they talked glowing reviews about Prana direct market solutions as well as their interactions with them. But we're not only talking about that today, we're talking about Comics the Magazine, which is a physical publication as well, which we're going to dive into. Joined by the publisher of that, the ever-talented Adam Freeman. How are you doing?
That's me, the ever-talented. Oh, man, I like this, Kurt. I have my own podcast where I get to introduce people, and I do love that glowing introduction. And every time they all, wow, that feels great. They're not wrong. That feels great. Thank you, Kurt. That's really lovely. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm not trying to butter you up or anything, because I've been looking at what you've been creating with being the owner of Prana Direct Market Solutions, as well as being the publisher of Comics the Magazine. You have such a multifaceted functionality when it comes to business and the sense of comics itself that there's so much we're going to dive into here today that a lot of people don't know about distribution. A lot of people don't know about direct market. A lot of people are just creators of comics. They don't understand that business side of things. And I'm glad we're talking here today. So this is a great start.
Well, listen, I've been in this business now for 30 years, and it really did all become from a love of comics. I got a job at a comic book store just because I loved comics. I bought the store because I loved comics. I started working in publishing because I loved comics. And all along the way, I'm always interested in learning how things function, and that curiosity that drives me to learn how each step works really put me in a position where I could weaponize my ADHD and do 80 things at once, but all with the purpose of increasing the reach and quality and just general size of the comics industry. So that's really what we do. We spend a lot of time creating content and tools for the comics industry that we don't charge for. Obviously, we have other services that we do charge for. And yeah, you mentioned a couple of our clients. So yeah, we stay pretty busy.
So how do you accurately portray and describe what Comics the Magazine is?
Oh, well, that's easy. Comics the Magazine is, it's just about comics. It's in the title, man. Comics the Magazine is unapologetically enthusiastic about comics. We're kind of just done with snark. We're kind of done with negativity, with needing to bring others down in order to bring ourselves up. We just want to create a magazine, an imprint magazine that lives in comic shops, that lives where people who love comics are, that just celebrates the medium. It celebrates the people. It celebrates every wonderful facet of this weird, wacky industry of ours that shouldn't exist and yet continues to grow. Comics the Magazine is our love letter to the industry that has fed us and kept us creating and kept us interested for these many years. And we just wanted an opportunity to give everyone a focal point for that energy, because we have not, as an industry, had a magazine like this in a very long time.
Well, I was going to say that I'm having a hard time recalling like those types of publications myself. And it's been decades for me personally since I've walked into a comic book store. It's because everything's digital these days. It's just, for me, it's more of an ease of use. So right. When you look at Comics the Magazine, when you look at how you're approaching these local comic book stores from a distribution standpoint of this magazine here, everyone's so used to digital. Why did you want to go for a physical print?
I'm going to push back on that, Kurt. I would say not everyone is. If everyone had made the transition to digital for comics, we would have a very different industry. But still to this day, digital comic sales really only represent somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10% of the overall sales of those books. Something about comics we want in our hands. We want physical. We want that tactile moment of sitting with something. And I think it also goes to the fact that if in order to read, we need to separate ourselves from the screens in order to give attention to anything. One of the things that's really interesting about running a magazine in 2026 is you would think that websites and blogs would be able to dig deep and, go on for 5,000-10,000 words about something that is interesting and something that you came to it interested in. But no, they don't. They stick with listicles. They stick with, brief write-ups. Anything that is just keeping your attention just long enough so you don't scroll away. The only way to really get your attention is to make you put your screen down and pick up something physical. So I think that's why comics just live so well in an imprint world. And magazine specifically fits in that because if you want to, I'm a marketer by trade. That's how I get paid. That's how I come into the world. And if you want to, as a marketer, reach comic book fans, it's really no place digitally to do that. Websites have failed us. Social media has failed us. There are a few creators like you, Kurt, who are doing incredible jobs of keeping contact with fans and showing them what's good and doing that. But you're few and far between, and as a group, you don't really penetrate. The studies that we've done say that 87% of comics fans who buying in comic shops, which is where most comics are sold, right? 87% of them make up their mind in the store. They don't do any prior research. They're not affected by anybody's reviews. They just go in and they look at the shelves and they talk to the guy behind the counter, and then they make up their mind, and that's what they buy. So if you want to reach them, you have to be in those stores and you have to be physical.
That basically is how this magazine is solving this particular reach. Then you're trying to solve the problem of, hey, this is what's coming out. Some comics you may not know or maybe they aren't on the shelves at their local comic book store, and you're just being proactive when it comes to what you're providing.
Exactly. And you do what I do for a living, and you hear a lot of people saying, oh, we need, I don't know, comics buyer's guide again. We need Wizard. We need something that's hyping actual comics instead of talking about the politics of comics. After a while, you hear that and you realize, okay, well, there's only a handful of people who can pull something like this off, and I happen to be one of them. So we might as well try. And so that's what we did. We said we might as well try. I mean, it was mind-bogglingly successful so far. It's caught us all off guard. Even though we knew people wanted this kind of thing, I have no idea how much.
Was it due to sales? Was it due to an increase in marketing? Was it an increase in maybe with your own bottom line with Prana Market Solutions? Like, how did you notice that increase in attention?
Oh, for the magazine? Well, I mean, that's a simple thing. 100,000 units were sold of issue 1. 80,000 units of issue 2. We still haven't got the numbers in for issue 1, but I can tell you that this social media for comics, the week that we came out on March 11th, I don't know if you saw it, but man, I could not go anywhere without seeing our logo and seeing people talk about the magazine. I know plenty of websites that don't see 100,000 people in a month. So let's just be clear. And that doesn't cost those people anything. Just to go to your site doesn't cost you anything. And yet most of them don't get that kind of traction. So that's what I mean. When I say people overwhelmingly are choosing this, it's because this is what comics is for them.
It's also something that you don't often see in comic conventions, because that's a similar vibe to your local comic book store when you're just perusing Artist Alley and you happen upon an artist that you've never heard of, and you look down and something catches your eye, whether it's a cover, whether it's another name attached to it, whatever the case may be. So I think the amount of genres and the amount of comics that are out there, whether it's Eastern or Western, is rather large and amazing to see. But how do you filter through the noise? Like, how do you look at your magazine and say, I want to interview person X or person Y? They would be a great person for this article, or maybe they're an older name or a newer name that people might not have known. Like,
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And it's one we struggle with every day. I'll be honest, right? There is no single answer to that question because we are constantly rebuilding this thing. We keep talking about building the plane after it's left the ground. It often feels that way. We start with a feature. What is it that this magazine is going to be about? What's going to be on the cover? Our first feature was Absolute Batman. You cannot look at a success story inside of the comic shops over the last, I don't know, 15 years that Absolute Batman does not completely dwarf other than itself. Like, it is an incredible moment in our culture and in our medium that this book really reached an audience, and it's specifically designed for one of the biggest audiences we've ever seen come into comics. And it has done incredibly well. So we start with the feature, and then it's really about, what are we interested in? What are we excited about? What are our freelancers excited about? If you can write and you bring us something that you're excited about, we do. You mentioned Source Point earlier. We have an upcoming piece from Dirk that's going to be, I think, I don't know, 3 or 4 issues down the road, but he talks about why he loves horror so much, horror stories, and like, I mean, it's poetry how well he wrote it. That's just it. Are you passionate about it? Are we passionate about it? Are we excited? It really comes down to, comics are an incredibly exciting medium. And if we can build on that excitement, that's the goal of the magazine just from the beginning.
Because you work with both Prana and, of course, Comics the Magazine here, is there one Prana habit or framework you found yourself unconsciously using when you started planning Comics the Magazine? And when did you realize, oh, I'm running this magazine like a client?
That's a great question. I don't know if I would say, well, it actually started as a client. Chip Zdarsky started something called ZCN, which he started as a joke. It was a way for him to promote all the books that he was working on in comic shops. So he sent out this free thing. He asked a few of his friends if they wanted to advertise in order to help him pay for the printing. He sent out this free flyer that would look like a magazine, right? He enjoyed making it. So he did 3 or 4 issues. And I told you earlier about how people kept saying to me, why don't we have a magazine anymore? Legitimately, there was like 3 to 6 months where that's all people wanted to ask me. And I'm like, I don't want to make a magazine. I've got other stuff to do. I've got other clients. I've got other work. I started telling them, look, if you really want to do this, talk to Chip Zdarsky. He's already doing ZCN. That thing could scale and become the Wizard magazine you want it to be. Eventually, we were at a convention and somebody reintroduced me to him. I said the same thing to him. I said, look, I love what you're doing. I think it could scale, it could grow. And he said, that's really funny because I don't enjoy the business side of it. I don't enjoy working with the distributor and the printers and, the retailers and all of those things that go into this stuff. And I'm like, okay, those are things I know how to do. As a result of that, we built a workflow for advertising sales. And that was something I didn't have. And the thing about magazines, not everybody, a lot of people want to complain about how many ads there are in magazines. But I will tell you right now, the reason that comic books are $7, $8 a piece is because there's no more advertising. It's just a very mechanical issue. The money has to come from somewhere. So you could be selling those pages to advertisers. We had done their work now. We turned his flyer essentially into a successful magazine. It was profitable in our first month working with them, and then throughout the end of that year. And then he decided that he wanted to step away because, I don't know, he's doing 8 books at Marvel, I think. I'm not sure what he's doing with his day. He's crazy. That guy's a busy guy. Anyway, so he decided he wanted to step away, and we thought, okay, well, now we have this system. We've got the hard part done. We know how to sell ads. So how does the easy part come together? Let me tell you, like anything else we do, we did not do this because it was easy. We did this because we thought it was going to be easy. And so we figured that part out though too. And so far, so good. So as far as does it act like a client? It is actually, technically it is a client because it's its own entity. And so we at Prana treat it like a client. But like all of our clients, we want to make sure that it is doing as well as humanly possible. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think I got close to it anyway.
I think so. I mean, it's a good history lesson as well too, but it's also a side of business that us average people just don't understand or know unless you're actively in a marketing field or in the business side of things. And I think that's why I like these types of interviews is because I'm diving into, I briefly touched on.
Yeah,
It's not my
sure.
wheelhouse. It's not something that I know about, but I think those that are creating comics, those that get to be on the show here, if they watch this, they're understanding the side that they don't really know about or even care about a little bit better. And I think you're
Yeah.
explaining it extremely well. So I
Oh,
really
thank
thank
you.
you for that. And in fact, when I was talking to Adriano Ariganello there from Pesto Comics, he had glowing things to say about you guys as well too, especially with Prana. He's been pushing hard for the last 2 years in regards to his marketing side of things to get more people to actively purchase his books. From that side of things, from a creator that wants to approach, say, Prana or approach Comics the Magazine here, what exactly can they do? How can they prepare themselves for what both areas have to offer?
Well, okay, so that's it's a great question. On the creator side, I mean, if you're trying to get involved in Comics the Magazine editorially or even on the advertising side, well, a lot of our advertising comes from creators who have creator-owned books or Kickstarters or whatever they're promoting. Honestly, it ends up being really simple. info@pranadm.com will get you through to our team, and you say that the services that you're offering, I want to learn more. We can absolutely do that. Just drop us a line there, or info@comicsthemagazine.com. It gets you access to us editorially and our advertising sales. And if you just want to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. If you don't hear back from us, that inbox is getting a little crazy. So I apologize for not being able to respond to everybody who comes into that one. Those are the easiest ways. To get real specific on Prana, we do a number of things, both for the industry and for our clients. We do our crowdfunding work where we work with different clients to build crowdfunding campaigns and help them promote it and help them handle all the logistics and fulfillment and all the other pieces that go into a crowdfunding campaign. Then we have something called Prana Publishers, which both SourcePoint and Pesto Comics are involved in. We take publishers who wouldn't be able to get distribution on their own, and we not only get them into the catalogs, meaning lunar distribution, universal distribution, which covers Canada and growing in the US, and Diamond UK. We get you into those catalogs so the stores can order it, but we also do a lot of marketing for you. So we have a lot of content that was focused for the industry. It is a lot of kind of B2B sort of content. We have a podcast called Comic Industry Insiders. We do a weekly live show called Comic Industry Insiders Live, 2 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday. And then we do a newsletter called the Prana Bullet that is a rundown of everything that's happening in comics and has reporting week to week for our bestseller list, which is the most accurate look at the sales data that's happening inside of comic shops. We have an arrangement with 2 different POS systems that allows us to see sales numbers from over 600 stores and over 80,000 consumers. That allows us to give you rankings of how single issue books are working in the shops, and we're growing that all the time. As a Prana publishers, you have access to all of that. You also get really great rates on the advertising in the magazine. So yeah, we do a lot to take care of our our clients, and we're always looking for new ways to work with people just to help with publishing. Generally, I have these two things that we always use as guiding principles. One is that the comic book shop is an incredibly valuable resource that really deserves protection and all the support they can get. The second is that the only barrier to market should be the quality of the book. Everything else you should be able to get out of the way. And we're working towards those 2 goals all the time and hopefully helping people as we go.
It's amazing. I mean, next to libraries, comic book stores are the best alternative when it comes to reading.
Truly. Truly, truly, truly. And they are an incredibly unique sector of what's known as brick and mortar retail. I don't know if what it's like near you, Kurt, but everywhere I have lived, strip malls that used to be full of little mom and pop toy stores and pet stores and bookstores and on and on and on have been replaced by service. All right, they have kung fu studios and nail salons and laundromats. The only exception to that rule is comic shops. Comic shops have not gone up or down. Let me just say the stat and then I'll tell you the exception. They've not gone up or down in the store count for the last 20 years, plus or minus 4%, which is remarkable. Why is it remarkable? Because people are constantly coming into them. The American Library is struggling in many ways to keep up with the comic shop. Comic shops are this incredibly, incredibly valuable resource. Now, when I say there was an exception to that rule, that exception was 2025, when we saw an almost 15 to 20% increase in the number of stores. So it's new. We're coming in hot.
Are you seeing anything in the direct market right now that most fans don't understand, but that directly shape how you build comic magazine?
Sure. I would say that our entire industry is being sculpted by what we've started calling the dogman generation. The section of Gen Z who grew up during a time when Scholastic Graphics began and started publishing Bone. Then Bone made way for Smile and those books from Raina Telgemeier, all of which made room for Dogman. And Dogman was the monster. It is one of the best-selling, I believe it might even be the best-selling children's book series of all time. And what you end up with is this entire generation of kids that have grown up speaking comics natively. They didn't have to learn how comics works. They just got it because that's what they were fed at the Scholastic Book Fair. So these kids then grew into manga because anime was a big deal and they really were focused in on manga. And that allowed them to transition from Chainsaw Man and oh gosh, I usually have these titles right off the top of my head. Yeah, exactly. Attack on Titan. They transitioned from those titles into now where they are getting their first jobs, getting their first homes. They have access to their own money and their own space. And this is when people tend to discover the comic shop again, right? We go through this period where we find comics and then we go off and discover dating. And then we remember that we love comics and we start picking them up again. Well, this generation's coming into the comic shops for the first time now in their late teens, early 20s, and they are spending a lot of money, mostly on books like Absolute Batman, because it is designed for them. It's specifically designed for somebody who came up through manga, but knows American culture. And so as a result, we are seeing stores up 20, 30% over last year. And we're talking about stores with like 30, 40-year histories behind them. And they're saying they're seeing the biggest sales numbers they've ever seen. DC is showing the biggest sales numbers they've had since the late 80s. What we're seeing right now is this not only a generational shift, but a shift towards building the content around this generation. And so as a result, I think we are in for another 5 to 10 years of growth as this Generation Z comes into our shops and begins to shape how the entire industry works.
The media is only going to get better. I mean, print quality has gotten better over the years. The artist quality has gotten better over the years. Since if you look at the 70s and 80s of comics or manga versus what we're seeing here today, we're getting into mixed media. We're getting into streaming platforms are now like publishing things. Like I'm expecting virtual reality to be the next thing when it comes to reading comics. Like it feels like we're almost at that level, you know? Like
one of the clients that we work for is this company, this title here, The Future Is, which is something that we publish with a publishing company called Rekka Comics, which is Rekka is hacker spelled backwards. There's a cybersecurity firm that wanted to start a comic book publisher. And we helped them build a series that is based around the principles of cybersecurity and hacking and all of those things. And it's set in the future where AR and VR are virtually interchangeable. And so we're seeing that kind of future play out as we have build this story. It's crazy how much of the things that we started this off with seemed so far in the future, but now feel like they're just really happening in real time. Yeah, I believe all of that's going to be the case. But I also see this generation, this Gen Z generation, many of them are saying, I don't want to lean into technology like my generations past have done. I'm more interested in what did I just hear? It's called friction maxing. Right? They want to increase the amount of friction in their lives to keep them from being slid down into this virtual wormhole, right? I like getting rid of friction. However, like, this is a generation that's picking up flip phones and avoiding social media at all costs, and they want physical media. So I think it's going to be both. I think you're right. I think the world is going to look very different, but in some parts of it are going to look exactly the same, if not more like it was in 1985.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just thinking the same thing. I'm just like, I remember my first flip phone. I remember had one on my hip that I could drop 100 feet and it would still be working fine.
Oh yeah, that was a brick. It was a tool. Yeah. Yeah. Instead of these delicate little screens that we carry around and give all of our attention to. Yeah. No, it's yeah. I know.
Everything does feel cyclical, whether it's comics,
Sure.
whether it's media, whether it's whatever, and it's what we have to stop and consume and what we enjoy in our lives. And if you
Yep.
can't enjoy comics, then I don't know why you're watching the show or why you're even reading, for that matter.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And I think that's also kind of goes back to Comics a Magazine. Our goal is really to just be a place that focuses on the positive, right? It celebrates the positive aspects of our medium and our culture. It does not dwell on the mistakes that were made or the inequalities. We are focused 100% on how awesome comics are. And I think that's a note that has resonated with everyone.
So, are there
Yeah.
like 5 comics that you read in your past that you think Gen Z would enjoy today?
Oh my gosh, that's a really great question, Kurt. Yeah, I think so. Frank Miller is having a heyday, and I think if you cannot go back and look at Dark Knight Returns, you're always going to find something there. I mean, it's so dumb to ask about Watchmen, but man, Watchmen is still to this day, and those two books done in 1986, man, they've just made the whole world different. I mean, obviously you can't talk about 1986 without talking about Mouse, but we won't even get into that. This generation that loves drama and loves interpersonal drama, boy, oh boy, when they discover Love and Rockets, when they discover the Hernandez brothers, oh, forget it. They're going to be in heaven. And I think there was an entire generation for us that happened in the early 90s of these autobiographical comic, either slice of life or autobiographical, that I think people are going to find and just fall in love with all over again. Personally, I'm thinking about Seth's It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken. I don't know why that keeps coming up for me lately, but I just keep going back to that book. Yeah, I think that there's so much to look at in especially the 80s and 90s that still feels fresh. And that's just the thing. When I started in retail, back in the mid 90s, there were no reprints, right? There were a few, but you had to really kind of hunt and find them, and you could keep everything that was in print in stock in a standard comic shop. Now that's just physically impossible, right? Because everything is available, right? Much like everything else in our lives, we have access to all of the information, all of the data, all of it. And I think as this new generation comes up, they have such a wealth of content and product and stories just to dive into. And I'm looking forward to hearing about them discover it for the first time,
When you pick up a book for the first time, or you finally read that must read list that your friend keeps pushing on you, type thing.
Yeah,
It's just one of those things where
that's it, dude.
I'll finally get to it, and now I have time. I'm going to get to it. And then you're so excited about turning the first page and seeing a panel that just opens your eyes to something amazing.
It's going to make all the difference in the world when you start looking at that. There's so much good product in every genre that we just have such a bright future ahead of us in comics right now.
Because you're so active in both marketing as well as clients, as well as Comics the Magazine here, what does a typical month look like when you're juggling everything between Prana, Comics the Magazine, everything like that? Do you sleep? Is that something that happens?
I do sleep. I actually really do work hard to make sure I get a healthy amount of sleep. Prana didn't really take off until I started finding like-minded individuals who could work with me. People who had different skills than I did, who had the same passion for comics that I do. As a result of that, we were able to start working on a lot of different projects all at once. And I think I mentioned this earlier. I love this phrase that I've weaponized my ADHD, because in any given day, I don't know, let's look at it. Let's look at a given day in the calendar here. See, some of these I can't even talk about. All right, here's a good day. Started off with a potential client who wants us to help with their sales and marketing and discussing those things. Then it was a meeting about a piece that we're writing for Comics the Magazine. Then I have, we have standard meetings for all of our programs. So we'll have a meeting about the podcast or about our clients. We'll just run through them all. So this was the last Thursday. Then I met with this company that's doing incredible stuff with print on demand, that they can print on demand all over the world. We're trying to find a way to make that work for our clients. The idea that you can then the customer can place an order anywhere in the world and have it printed locally and shipped to them in like 2 days. We're in that space right now. Oh, then I had 2 different other podcasts that I had to record, much like yours. I had to record my own podcast. That's a 2-hour chunk. We worked on the newsletter, and then I met with my lawyer. That was a day. That's what my kind of days look like. We have to do all of these things because we can, right? That's what it comes to, is when you realize that you have the ability to put together something like the bestseller list and nobody else is doing it and our industry needs it, then it becomes real easy to say, all right, well, then we just have to figure out the financials of how this will work. And once you've got that figured out, then you essentially are creating something of value for everybody. And that just really is motivating. It keeps you going. And working with a lot of really incredible people. The Prana team has grown incredibly. I would say we went from, I think, 2 people to, I think we're at 12 as of now in the last 2 years. So it's been an incredible time of growth for us. And it's just because we opened ourselves up to, you want to come on this journey, and let's make some cool shit together. Yeah.
No, I think that's amazing. It's just taking that first step towards reaching out to people and seeing the talent that's out there, whether they're an amazing writer, whether they're creating an article for you, or whether they're a comic book creator that is finally reaching a stage where they're actively trying to promote themselves rather than just social media. I think that's the hardest part, is taking that first step in a creative process, because the business side of things just usually takes away that joy of creating sometimes.
I mean, the thing that we do, I've helped contribute, and I've given notes and ideas and whatnot to so many different books over the years, but I've never written anything. I've never written a script. I've drawn pages just out of goof, right? Because I thought of a funny gag that I wanted to draw just because I wasn't doing anything else. That kind of stuff I've never published or even shown, but I'm not a comics creator. But what I am is somebody who understands the mechanics, somebody who's curious about the mechanics of how comics works. And I love working with those people who are very endlessly curious about the systems and the operations and the sales and marketing and the logistics of these things. The people that are interested in that, they're incredibly special and rare, and they need to be celebrated all we can. It is those people that we gather together and say, look, come with us so that we can take other people's stories and other people's dreams and make them happen. And so it's incredibly rewarding. You asked if I sleep, and the answer is yeah, but I do miss out on a lot of other stuff because this is feels important, and it's so rewarding when you see someone take an idea all the way and create an audience and then touch that audience with that idea. That's incredible.
And it's only getting better. I mean, in looking at yourself and what you're putting together with Comics the Magazine as well as Prana here, what's your 3-year timeline going to look once Prana and Comics are together? Everything's working perfectly. You're not worried about advertising and everything along that line. What does that look like in terms of what's on the page, the data you publish, and the way shops actually order comics?
I love that you believe, after talking with me for, what is it, 36 minutes, 40 minutes. I love that you believe I can even project out that far. Wow. You know what, man, I don't know. I know that there's many things that I think we're able to do. I think as an industry, there's some infrastructure pieces that need to be built, mostly around metadata and how it's gathered and how it is standardized and then distributed. I think we have the ability to build that. I know that we have the ability to collect and share and utilize data, the sales data that we have available to us. I believe we can do that in a much more effective way for all businesses in comics. I believe that we have an incredible opportunity with an audience that has come in that is going to allow us to grow entire industries around comics. I believe that now is the time for anybody who wants to get into this industry to double down and spend that capital of your time making it work, because we have a long path of growth ahead of us. As far as the future of Prana goes, I don't know, man. I mean, I barely can keep track of what I'm doing next week. I think I'm going to Chicago next week. Yeah, I think so. That's what I'm doing next week. I'm going to Chicago. I've got 2 panels and we're doing a party at C2E2. That's what's on my horizon. After that, I don't know, man. I barely even know what's happening in June.
You know, for creators or retailers that are watching or listening to this interview here, who feel overwhelmed by distributors, data, and marketing jargon, what's one mindset shift or simple practice from your Prana playbook you wish everyone would adopt more?
None of us is in this alone. I think that's it. People who want to make a living in comics usually come to it after realizing that they weren't built for corporate America, or they weren't built to be a superstar, or, not a superstar, like a rock star or an athlete or whatever, right? They realized they weren't built for that, but they were built for comics. And as a result of that, we end up with an industry full of incredibly individualistic people who are comfortable being on their own. And I would say that, like, for stores specifically that are overwhelmed by the new paradigm of needing to have multiple distributors and needing to deal with all the data that comes in, you don't have to do that alone. There are services that are available now for an incredibly small fee, considering what you're getting, that will help you manage that and help you understand that workflow. If you are a creator and you're looking to build a career that allows you to handle all the different pieces in your life, there are people who want to help you. There are publicists, and there are advertisers and marketers and people who are interested in helping you and making sure this goes. Agents, there are specialists, for lack of a better word, who can help you do that. And finding your team, finding your people can take a lot of work, but it is one of the things that is so valuable to iterate and figure out the balance of how your team works, because we all need one. Doing any of this alone, I think, is the mistake. And feeling overwhelmed is probably a good indicator that you are isolating yourself too much.
Yeah, no, I felt that with the show.
That was off the top of my head, Kurt. I've never been asked that question, so I don't know if I got that note.
But it is good if you can find a team of like-minded people that are working towards a common goal. And I think it's hard sometimes as a creative person to let go, especially if you've done everything alone. It's hard to trust sometimes more than anything that person across from you, whatever the case may be. So I think this is a good step.
You know what? So one of Prana Publishers is really our attempt to help gather people together in order to make access to distribution that much easier. But the truth is, you don't need us, right? Publishers generally, comics publishers, they do a good job of interconnecting and finding each other online and creating groups and that sort of thing. I think where they often don't take that far enough is they don't create a cohort. They don't create a group. They don't create people. They don't gather together to solve the problems that they're each trying to solve individually and solve them together. When you go to printers and you have, a long list of books that are going to be done in the next year, you get a much different deal than if you have one, right? If you go to a distributor and you have 10 of your friends who are all publishing books at the same time, you're much more likely to get that distributor to listen to your pitch, especially if they only have to deal with one of you and not 15. So I think this is the time for gathering together and putting together a cohort that will help the work grow, because it's not sustainable as an individual. I mean, if it is, you're limiting yourself to your own abilities and your own inabilities, and that's often the death knell of many of these businesses.
Introspective questions here. There are 4 questions I was going to ask Stanley. That never happened. So I asked creative and
Okay.
talented people, yourself, these same 4 questions. They're part of a long-running documentary I've been putting together for like 15 years called "Little Person Amongst Media Giants." So, yeah, it's
That's awesome. I can't wait. This sounds
yeah,
great.
so can I. It's a little.
I bet. All right. No pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I don't pay you for your psychologist bill, so we're all good.
I'll put on my inner stand. Let's go.
Everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who is that for you?
Oh boy. I think that for me, the path I'm on started with being inspired by a man named Bob Wayne, who was the head of sales and marketing, or sales. I don't know. He had several titles at DC Comics. This would have been late 90s, I think, through the aughts. I'm not sure when exactly he retired, but Bob was an ex-retailer who essentially helped Paul Levitz create the really retailer friendly systems that DC Comics had for many, many years. And Bob is from my same hometown of Fort Worth, Texas, and we kind of saw each other and vibed a bit. He's a prickly guy even now, especially at an older age. I love that man, but he is he's like a pawpaw, like a little prickly pear, right? But he genuinely loved comic shops and was genuinely trying to make DC Comics a good place for those shops to grow. And I think so much of him, and even before him, a woman named Carol Kalish, who worked for Marvel, who recognized that comic shops were the future for Marvel and did everything she could to help them grow. Starting from those 2 individuals really was kind of how I entered into comics publishing, and has shaped my entire career since then.
From a professional standpoint, you are, of course, an amazing marketer. You are, of course, the publisher of Comics Magazine. You've interacted with many clients and doing very well for yourself from a professional standpoint. Do you consider yourself personally successful?
My accountant does not. Let's put it that way. My bookkeeper says, this is success. Do I consider myself successful? I believe I have accomplished a lot of success. I think I've accomplished a lot of the things I set out to do. I still have so many more that I want to accomplish. But at the end of the day, I have a healthy family who has lives in a nice home in a nice part of the world, and we get to choose what we want to do from day to day. That cannot be denied. So I think that is a success. I got to build an entire career inside of the comic book industry, and I never made a comic book myself. I'm very proud of that. But there is a certain amount of financial success that you have to put forward of you as a carrot in order to do a lot of these things. So I would say that many people would say I have not been successful, and I would not disagree with them. But I was able to print 100,000 copies of a magazine and get them into stores. That's a pretty big deal. So yeah, I think yes, with the caveat that I'm not done. How's that?
That's good.
All right.
I don't think we're ever done personally, but
yeah, hopefully not. I hope not. I can't imagine what it must feel like to be done. Yeah.
I think that's called death.
Yeah. Or retirement. I know guys who like fishing. Sure, let's go. Yeah.
All right. The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
I don't know. I think somewhere along the line, I stopped emotionally connecting with failure. I stopped feeling like the failure was like a mistake was an indicator of my own worth. And I'm not sure exactly where that came along, to be honest. But so now when there's a mistake, even a big one, like we've got some doozies that happened to us even this year, that put other businesses out of business. So far they haven't us. So I would say that the only way to deal with a mistake is to learn from it. It's to take the loss that mistake created and use that as your tuition for your later success. I think that's the only way to look at this business in general, or maybe just life.
The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way, whether it's as part of a amazing Prana Publishing, or as the direct market solutions, or as a publisher for Comics the Magazine. Maybe they're creative in some way, shape, or form from the business side of things.
Sure.
How can they inspire the generation that follows them?
Yeah, I have thought about this. How do you motivate or inspire people to come up and put their chips on the line and create something cool? And I don't know that you really can. What I think you can do is continue to be driven by creating things that are cool, right? Driven by creating the thing that you think needs to exist. I think that drive is inspiring. And oftentimes the results of that are inspiring. Sometimes those results are never seen, but the drive has to be there anyway. It has to be about the practice of making those things more than the result of making those things. So I think you can do that. And I believe that there's a certain amount of generosity of knowledge that has to come in order to even refine your own thought. I believe there's a marketer named Seth Godin who I absolutely love, and he has done a daily blog for decades. Like literally, like longer than you would think the internet has been around. He's done a daily blog, and through that daily blog, he's refined his thoughts and he's written books, and he has become an inspiring speaker and leader. And it became out of that generously giving away the information, right? He didn't hold that information tight and say, this is proprietary. This is, if you want this, you have to hire me. No, he said, this is how I understand the world. And this is the perspective I'm coming from. This is my experience that led me to that perspective. And if you have that same experience, maybe I can teach you something so you don't have to make the same mistake that I did. I think that's an incredibly generous and valuable thing. And if you are putting it out there, your audience will hear it eventually, and hopefully be inspired in the same way that he has inspired me. Maybe something that we do inspires the next person who will make the leap into, opening a comic shop or starting a publisher or just publishing the book they've always wanted to write, or doing the services that everybody needs. There's a story about a guy named Philo Farnsworth who knew Thomas Edison, saw that he was building a light bulb and said, you know what, I can't really help. I don't know anything about the chemistry of light bulbs, but it looks to me like you need glass bulbs. And so while I don't know how, I can go learn how to blow glass bulbs. And so he did. And he was the guy who essentially created all the bulbs that then Thomas Edison was able to put the light bulb into. So I feel like I'm the Philo Farnsworth for many of these creators, and I'm happy to be that. And I think if you are inspired by the things that we do and then come follow through and see the things that we say about what we do, then man, it's a wonderful life to have of creating those bulbs for these inventors.
Nice. Good answer to that.
Thank you.
Well, I've been doing this for like 18 years. So like I've heard all the answers, so that was a good one. I like it.
Thank you. Good.
Last question is this before we wrap up, and where we can find you, how we can support you, and everything like that is the following.
Sure.
If your life was a comic book, what would its title be, and what would its soundtrack be?
I keep coming back to Seth's "It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken." It's a really great title. It truly is. And I think that's true. You talked about failure. My career and my life has led me to moments that looked like utter failure. I mean, I've been homeless, right? It wasn't long, but it was, post a divorce, and she had the home and I needed to find another place. And I was homeless for a while. And this is while I was trying to make a career in publishing. So I have gone through a whole lot. I don't know that anybody wants to know the story of my life, but if they did, I can't do better than Seth. I just can't. It is a good life if you don't weaken. It is a good life if you keep trying and you keep iterating and you stick to the things that you're passionate about, even when it feels silly to others. If you find success in it and you find your self-worth in making this part of the world better, then, screw them. You don't need that. You didn't need their approval anyway.
Love it. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, I do hate to say it, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
This is incredible. You did an incredibly good job of keeping a tight 60, my friend. This is really well structured. I'm impressed. I'm no good at that part. And I'll just ramble on for 3 hours with people. So this was a joy. Thank you, Kurt. I loved it.
No, my earlier shows were 2-hour live sessions. That was like back in 2008. So.
Yeah. No. That's got to be. It's exhausting. We do an hour to an hour and a half every week, and oh boy, I come off of it just, jazzed, but also I need a nap. Yes.
Yeah. You ran a marathon verbally. I
exactly.
Totally understand. So where can we find you? How can we support you? Prana Direct Market Solutions, Prana Publishing, Comics Magazine, everything like that.
Well, if you are a fan of comics, I haven't shown a single copy here. Let's pull one out here. If you're a fan of comics, go to your local comic shop and ask for Comics the Magazine by name. It was I will say I'm really proud of the fact that we had a single copy in every comic shop in the world on March 11th, and just based on the number of people who are ordering it, most stores will have it. So go in, set up a subscription, go in and ask them, hey, I want this in my pull box every week, because every month, because it's going to be out on the first week of every month until, I don't know, I get hit by a bus or something. If you are a publisher, if you are a creator, if you're just someone who's trying to find their path in comics, go to pranadm.com, sign up for the newsletter, sign up for the bullet. We put that out every Friday. It's completely free. We give away all of that information to try and make your career or business in comics that much better. Check out our podcast, Comic Industry Insiders, available on all podcasting networks and on YouTube under the Prana DMS, I think is our username there. We also do the live show, Comic Industry Insiders Live, 2 p.m. Eastern, also on YouTube, also on all of our social media platforms. You can find Prana DM in, I don't know, all our Prana DMS. We've not been real consistent. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can find it. And if you really want to hear me talk, it's mostly just reiterating what we do about everything else. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook mostly. LinkedIn tends to be very business focused, obviously, and Facebook tends to be more comics fan focused, because I'm talking to comic book retailers mostly on Facebook. So yeah, that's where you can find me, I think.
Well, like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others, because I've lost count, on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. Love that camera zoom in. That was a perfectly timed head shake. I love it. You can, of course, find the podcast on all podcast. You can find the podcast on all podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcast, by searching Two Geeks Talking. That's TWO Geeks Talking. And I'm on social media at Kurt Sasso, at Two Geeks Talking. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.